It was like living in one of those sappy rom-coms at first. Jake and I, we were the it couple of our little world. Every morning, our tiny kitchen buzzed with the kind of laughter that makes you think, yeah, this is it. This is the good stuff. We'd dance around each other, making breakfast, stealing kisses, the works. It was bliss, pure and simple. But you know me, right? Always eyeing the next big thing. And at work, it was the senior manager position. Picture this. An office with a killer view. Respect oozing out of every congratulatory handshake. The works. I wanted that. Bad. So, this one night, over Jake's killer spaghetti, I floated the idea. My boss really digs ambition, I said, trying to sound casual while my heart was doing the samba. Jake, bless him, he was all in. Go for it, he said. And that was that. My green light. The next day, I turned it up a notch at work. You know, the whole, accidentally, laughing a little too loud at the boss's jokes, holding his gaze just a tad longer. Child's play. Really, but effective. I told myself it was nothing, a means to an end. And Jake, he was my biggest cheerleader, always pushing me to chase my dreams. But as those late nights at the office started piling up, his solo Netflix binges became the norm. I was chasing the dream, all right, but the cost? Well, I wasn't ready to admit there was one. Not yet. I kept telling myself it was all for us, our future. A little harmless flirting for a shot at financial security was okay, right? Except, every time I looked in the mirror, there was that little twitch in my gut. Guilt? Probably. Did I listen to it? Hell no. And there you have it. The happy marriage, the ambition, the plan, and the oh so innocent flirting. It's like setting up dominoes, you see? Line them up just right, and all it takes is one little nudge. But let me tell you, when they start to fall, they don't always go the way you think they will. And boy, was I in for a surprise. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us create more content you love. Thank you for your support. Remember that whole, harmless, flirting gig I thought I had under control? Yeah, well, it turned a corner I didn't see coming. It all kicked off with this supposed strategy meeting with my boss. Just us. Supposedly hammering out project details. But then, bam, the conversation took a turn. Suddenly, we weren't talking targets and timelines. It was all, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And shared smirks over coffee cups. That meeting? That was me, stepping over the line I'd drawn in the sand, and boy, did I keep walking. The thrill of it, though, it was like being on a high. Each little flirtation, each laugh that lingered too long, it was electrifying. Felt like I was playing the lead in my own drama, cunning and daring all at once. And when it worked, when I saw that glint of interest, that hint of something more, it was addictive. But here's where it gets messy. With every sly comment, every accidental touch, the stakes got higher. I was pushing boundaries, and the thrill, it was unreal. Like, I knew I was playing with fire, but instead of backing off, I just turned up the heat. And Jake? God, I was so wrapped up in my own little world of ambition and flirtation. I started dodging his calls, making up excuses for why I couldn't make it to dinner on time, or at all. Sorry, babe, got caught up with work again. It was like I was living a double life. But here's the kicker, the promotion. It landed on my desk on a Tuesday, all shiny and official. Congratulations, senior manager, it said. The office threw me a little party, champagne and all. Everyone was all smiles and cheers, totally clueless about the dirty little secret of how I got there. And me? I was in the center of it, soaking up the congratulations, telling myself this was what success looked like. That moment, standing there with a glass of champagne in hand, watching everyone celebrate me, it hit me. What had I done? But there was no turning back, no do-overs. I'd made my choice, crossed lines I couldn't uncross. And for what? A title? A bigger office? I'd convinced myself this was all for our future, for me and Jake. But standing there, basking in my so-called success, it felt hollow. I'd traded bits of myself, my integrity, for this, and the worst part? I wasn't sure it was worth it. So, yeah, that's where it all led. To a promotion built on shaky ground. To nights spent lying awake, wondering if it was all about to come crashing down. And through it all, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost something far more valuable than what I'd gained. You'd think landing that senior manager spot would have been the peak, right? Sitting in that swanky new office, I should have been on top of the world. But there I was alone, the leather of my fancy new chair feeling more like a judge's bench. My desk, big and shiny, felt like it was mocking me, whispering, "Look what you did to get here." Pride battled guilt, and let me tell you, guilt's a heavyweight champ. Every congrats from my team, every pat on the back. It felt like I was sinking deeper into this hole I'd dug myself. I'd glance at my reflection in the window, expecting to see a winner. Instead, I saw a traitor staring back, her eyes full of questions I wasn't ready to answer. The thing about secrets, though, they're like time bombs. And mine? Well, it detonated in the worst way possible. It was a typical Thursday night. Jake was home early, and I was, well, late again. He decided to use the computer we rarely touched anymore. Bad luck or fate, call it what you want. He stumbled upon an email I'd been too careless to close. An email that laid bare the game I'd been playing. I walked in, ready to spin some tale about another late meeting. But the silence hit me first. Jake was there, in our living room, looking like he'd been sucker punched. Papers were strewn across the coffee table. My emails, printed out, evidence of my betrayal as clear as day. "What is this?" His voice was ice, his eyes fixed on me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Explain this to me, please." The plea in his voice, it cut deeper than anger would have. I fumbled for words, any words, that could undo what he'd seen. "Jake, it's not what it looks like. It was all just a game, a way to get ahead." Lame excuses spilled out, but I could hear the hollowness in them. There was no mistaking the truth in those printed words, no denying the deceit. He just sat there, silent, letting my words hang in the air like the last note of a song nobody wanted to hear. That silence? It was a verdict, a judgment passed without a single word from him. It said everything he didn't need to. So, yeah, that's how my secret triumph crumbled. Not with a bang, but with a printout of my own making. My shiny new office, my title, all of it felt like a house of cards, ready to collapse with the slightest breeze. And there I was, standing in the wreckage of my own making, trying to find words that could bridge the chasm I'd created. Spoiler alert, I couldn't find them. Let me just dive in because this part, it's where everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I wanted, just imploded. Jake had this look, right? The kind that's so calm, it's terrifying. He laid it out for me. No yelling, no drama. "It's either us for your job," he said. His eyes? They were like ice. The love we had, the warmth, gone. Just like that. I was a mess, but not the kind you'd think. My head was all ambition, no heart. I told myself, he'll get over it. He'll see it's for the best. I chose the job, guys. The freaking job over my husband. In my mind, I was convinced he'd come around, that he'd see it was all worth it in the end. But then, bam, the divorce papers hit me like a freight train. Holding them, feeling the weight of my choices, that shook me. Reality came crashing down, and let me tell you, it was colder and harder than any office floor. Walking into work after that was like stepping into a different dimension. My so-called triumph? It felt more like a cage. Whispers filled the halls, eyes darting away as I passed. Loneliness? It became my shadow, trailing me from my spacious office to the empty home that once buzzed with our laughter and dreams. And the victory? Oh, it was fleeting. All right. Every congratulations now had an asterisk. Every achievement a question mark. The respect I'd worked so hard for was tainted, stained by rumors and sidelong glances. It hit me then. I traded everything that mattered for a title, a piece of metal on the door that felt more like a millstone around my neck. The personal reckoning was brutal. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every choice, every mistake. The life I loved, the man I loved, gone. All because I couldn't see past my own ambition. But Jake wasn't done. His silence? It was the calm before the storm. He released a statement, not naming me, but didn't have to. The dots were connected, the picture clear. My personal betrayal turned public spectacle. His dignity made my disgrace all the more stark. The climax of this whole mess? It played out at an industry event. Packed room. The air thick with anticipation and, for me, dread. Jake was there, the embodiment of calm and resolve. When he spoke, his words weren't loud, but they might as well have been thunder. Integrity, he said, is the cornerstone of our profession. His gaze found me in the crowd, and I felt every eye turn my way. My career, my personal life, everything I thought I was building, it all came crashing down in that moment. One day, you're on top of the world. The next, you're spiraling so fast it makes your head spin. That was me. After the dust settled, and the reality of my actions hit home. My boss, the same one I thought I had in the palm of my hand, suddenly couldn't distance himself fast enough. Bam! Demoted. Just like that. No more senior manager. No more office with a view. Just a cubicle in the corner. A clear message that I was no longer welcome in the spotlight. Nights were the hardest. My apartment, once filled with laughter and warmth, was now just walls echoing with the silence of my own regret. Jake's absence was a gaping hole, a reminder of everything I had thrown away for a shot at success. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd let it all slip through my fingers. Then came the moment of truth, in that tiny, insignificant office they'd shoved me into. Looking out at the view that no longer inspired, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had traded my soul for this? For a fleeting moment of success? The realization was a bitter pill, the taste of regret sharp and unyielding. Trying to piece back my personal life was like gathering ashes after a fire. Friends, family, everyone looked at me with a mix of pity and disdain. I reached out, tried to make amends, but it was like talking to walls. The trust was gone, the damage, irreversible. So, I did the one thing left that I thought might make a difference. I tried to apologize to Jake, poured my heart into a letter, spilled out apologies and regrets, hoping for some kind of forgiveness. A sign that there was still something left to salvage. But nothing came back. No angry reply, no acceptance, just silence. His silence was a door closing, a chapter ending without the closure I so desperately sought. Work? That became a daily gauntlet. Colleagues who once respected me now avoided me like the plague. My reputation was mud. Every achievement I had earned now tainted by the scandal. It was clear. I was a pariah, unwelcome in the world I had fought so hard to conquer. And then, the final nail in the coffin, an article in a leading industry magazine. It laid bare my rise and fall, a tale of ambition gone awry. It was everywhere, unavoidable. I became the cautionary tale, the person everyone talked about in hushed tones, a lesson in what not to do. In the end, I was stripped of everything. My title, my respect, gone, relegated to tasks so menial. It was a daily reminder of how far I'd fallen. Every day at work was a reminder of my failures, a shadow of the career I once had. Ever felt like you're just going through the motions? That's been my life lately. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. My apartment, once our sanctuary, now feels like a giant, echoing void. It's like I'm living in a bubble, watching the world move on without me. And the silence? It's deafening. In a desperate bid to fill that void, I turned to charity work. Thought maybe, just maybe, helping others would help me find some semblance of redemption. But guess what? Even as I packed food boxes and handed out clothes, the hollowness inside me didn't budge. It was like trying to plug a dam with a piece of gum. The mirrors become my reality check every morning. The face staring back at me? I hardly recognize her. There's this weariness, a kind of resignation that's etched itself into my features. It's like I'm looking at the ghost of the woman I once was, the weight of my choices carved into every line. And let me tell you, ambition? It's a double-edged sword. Chased it with everything I had, only to realize I'd lost myself in the process. I used to know who I was, what I stood for. Now, I'm just a shell, filled with regrets and what-ifs. It's like I traded my soul for a title, and all I got in return was this overwhelming sense of loss. The final nail in the coffin? The divorce settlement. Court sided with Jake, said my actions contributed to our marriage's downfall. So there I was, watching whatever financial security I had left get sliced in half. Talk about a reality check. Then came the news that really knocked the wind out of me, Jake's engagement. To someone who actually shared his values, no less. That was the moment it truly hit me. I'd lost not just my husband, but the life we'd built, the future we dreamed of. All because I couldn't see past my own ambition. Nights are the worst. I find myself scrolling through old photos, reliving memories of a happier time. It's masochistic, really, this ritual of torturing myself with reminders of what I've lost. Each picture, each captured moment, is a stab of I've tried reaching out, tried to mend fences with old friends. But the response? Polite refusals, excuses that don't quite hide the underlying message. I've burned too many bridges. My social circle's not just diminished, it's non-existent. In a last-ditch effort to salvage anything from the wreckage, I wrote to Jake, poured my heart out, apologized for the mess I'd made. But guess what? That letter came back faster than a boomerang, returned to sender, slapped on it like a verdict. If I had any hope left, that was the moment it died. My apartment, once our cozy little love nest, had turned into a mausoleum of memories. Cold, silent, and just empty. Walking through those rooms was like wandering through a ghost town. Each corner a reminder of what I'd lost. Job hunting? What a joke that was. My resume, once a ticket to interviews and offers, was now just another piece of junk mail to the companies I applied to. Every polite, no thank you, was a nail in the coffin of my career. The industry that once courted me had slammed its doors in my face, branding me persona non grata. And that trophy, the one I worked my butt off for, holding it felt like grasping a handful of ashes. What I thought was victory tasted like ash in my mouth, a constant reminder that I'd sold my soul for a mirage. Nights were the worst. Me, alone with my thoughts, replaying every decision, every mistake, in vivid technicolor. The darkness wasn't just outside. It had seeped into my bones, a relentless reminder of the path I chose and where it led me. Then it hit me, the final nail in my coffin of realizations. Success, at the cost of everything that truly mattered, wasn't success at all. It was the loneliest spot in the world, a throne built on regrets and what-ifs. My pursuit of ambition didn't just burn bridges, it torched my entire life. The end of this twisted journey? Standing in my now empty office as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that felt like accusations. That moment, with the last light of day, the moment I stumbled upon Ethan's profile online, it was like a bolt from the blue. There I was, lounging on our couch, Mark's laughter echoing from the kitchen as he fussed over some new recipe he wanted to try. My finger hovered, then tapped. A message shot through the digital ether, rekindling something I thought was long dead. Long time no see, Ethan. How's life treating you? So casual. Yet my heart raced like I was doing something forbidden. Mark, bless him, was clueless, wrapped up in his culinary world, planning our future with the kind of innocence I suddenly felt miles away from. Ethan hit me back quicker than I expected. Hey, it's been ages. We should catch up. Coffee? Coffee turned out to be this little corner spot downtown, buzzing with life. A stark contrast to the comfortable predictability of my life with Mark. Slipping my engagement ring into my pocket felt like shedding a part of myself, but the thrill? Undeniable. We talked for hours, slipping back into our old rhythm as if the years apart had been mere minutes. Ethan's eyes still had that spark, the one that used to make my stomach do flips. And there it was again, that old flame, flickering back to life. I got home late, spinning a tale for Mark about a last-minute work crisis. He bought it. No questions asked. His trust as solid as ever. God. The guilt was a punch to the gut. But the exhilaration? Like a drug I couldn't quit. Ethan wanted more, and so did I. Secret texts turned into clandestine meetings. Each lie I fed Mark a brick in the wall I was building between us. Mark was all in on us, talking about houses and wedding venues, while I was sneaking around, meeting Ethan in shadowed corners of the city. Then Ethan dropped the bomb. A weekend getaway, just the two of us. Let's do something crazy, he said. And I, caught up in the whirlwind, agreed. Told Mark one needed a girls' weekend to blow off some steam. The look in his eyes, full of understanding and love, almost broke me. Almost. That weekend was like something out of a dream, secluded in a cabin away from the world, where Ethan talked about us like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I bought into it, hook, line, and sinker, imagining a future charged with passion and adventure. A stark contrast to the life Mark and I had planned. Coming back to reality was a slap in the face. Mark had thrown us an engagement party, a surprise, with our families and friends all there, smiling, celebrating. The guilt was a wave that nearly drowned me, but I kept my secret locked tight, smiling and playing the part of the happy Fianca copyright. Each of these moments, each lie, each stolen second with Ethan, was a step down a path I never thought I'd take. I was living a double life, caught between the comfort and love Mark offered and the fiery passion Ethan reignited in me. The thrill of the secret, the guilt eating at me, the love I had for Mark, and the desire for Ethan. It was a tangled web I'd woven, one that I was far too entangled in to escape unscathed. The thrill of sneaking around had its expiry date, stamped clearly the moment Ethan's patience ran thin. "We can't keep doing this," he pressed, his voice a blend of frustration and desperation. "You need to decide." Our secret rendezvous, once electrifying, had started to feel like a countdown to an inevitable crash. The weight of our actions, heavy like a storm cloud ready to burst, hung over us, sucking the joy out of our stolen moments. I remember staring at my reflection, the face of a woman caught between two worlds, neither of which seemed entirely hers anymore. Ethan's ultimatum echoed in my head, a relentless reminder of the mess I'd entangled myself in. It was in one of those moments of clarity, fueled by fear more than courage, that I made my choice. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan. I'm sorry." His reaction was a mix of anger and disbelief. "You'll regret this," he warned, his words a cold gust that I tried to shrug off. I convinced myself I could fix everything, that I could tuck away my betrayal like a dark secret and move on. That karma, or perhaps just consequence, has a way of catching up. Anonymous messages started popping up for Mark, each one a ticking time bomb. Panic wasn't just a reaction, it became my constant state. Ethan's revenge was more than a threat now, it was reality knocking on my door with a battering ram. The confrontation with Mark was inevitable. His face, a mix of confusion and hurt, cut deeper than any angry words could. "Is it true?" he asked, holding up his phone like it was evidence in a trial. I tried to lie, to weave a story that could patch the gaping holes in our life together. But lies, no matter how carefully crafted, have a way of unraveling. The receipts from the cabin getaway were the final nail in the coffin. Found accidentally, they turned our living room into a scene straight out of a drama, where truths are laid bare, and nothing is left unsaid. Mark's face, as I confessed, was something I'll never forget. It wasn't anger that dominated. It was something far worse, disappointment. A profound sadness that spoke volumes of the dreams we had shattered. Begging for forgiveness felt like trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. Mark's silence was a chasm between us, a gap filled with the ghost of what we were supposed to have. When he finally spoke, it wasn't to yell or accuse. "I need some time," he said, his voice void of the warmth I'd fallen in love with. Watching him leave, I was acutely aware of the silence he left in his wake. The house, once a symbol of our future, now felt like a mausoleum for all our plans and promises. The aftermath of his departure was a solitude that felt like punishment, a constant reminder of the cost of my choices. Each room echoed with memories, every corner a testament to what we had lost. The cold bed, the untouched dishes, the silence, it all screamed of the void Mark's absence left. In trying to hold on to a ghost from my past with Ethan, I'd lost my future with Mark. The realization was a bitter pill, one I was forced to swallow in the deafening quiet of our, now my, home. The moment Ethan decided to vanish from my life, it was like being plunged into cold water, shock followed by the numbing realization of my solitude. All my frantic attempts to reach him, messages sent into the void, were met with silence. A stark, unforgiving silence that mirrored the growing gap between Mark and me. The reality of my situation was a bitter pill, swallowing me whole into a sea of regret. Driven by a mix of desperation and hope, I bombarded Mark with messages, calls, voicemails, anything that might bridge the chasm I'd created. Each attempt felt like throwing a lifeline into an abyss, praying for a sign of life on the other end. But the silence that returned was a clear message. I had set into motion events that couldn't be undone, consequences that couldn't be outrun. When Mark finally agreed to meet, it wasn't the reunion I'd foolishly hoped for. Sitting across from him in our favorite cafe, the place where we once dreamed of a future together, I barely recognized the man in front of me. The warmth that once lit his eyes had been replaced by a guarded coolness, a barrier erected from pain and betrayal. "It's over," he said, his voice steady, devoid of the anger or sadness I'd braced myself for. Instead, there was an indifference, a detachment that was far more devastating. He'd moved beyond the pain I caused, leaving me stranded in its wake. His decision wasn't fueled by spite, but by a need to preserve what was left of himself. In that moment, I realized the depth of the rift between us, irreparable, vast, and entirely of my making. In a final, futile attempt to salvage some part of my crumbling world, I reached out to Ethan, clinging to the hope that something of our brief rekindling could be salvaged. But the silence that greeted me was a clear testament to his moving on. The harsh truth settled in. I had lost both men, not to time or circumstance, but to my own actions. The culmination of my choices unfolded in the now empty apartment that once buzzed with the promise of love and a shared future. Mark's final words echoed in the hollow space, each syllable a nail in the coffin of our relationship. "I'm leaving for good," he stated. A simple declaration that carried the weight of finality. There was no anger, no heated arguments, just the cold, hard reality of the end. As the door closed behind him, it felt like the closing of a book, a story that ended not with a bang, but with a whimper, left in the silence of our once shared space. The magnitude of my solitude was overwhelming. The apartment, a testament to what could have been, now stood as a monument to my choices. The echoes of our past life together, the laughter and love that once filled these rooms, had been replaced by a silence that was deafening. The dust settled on the empty shelves, on the photographs that still hung on the walls, each a mocking reminder of the future we'd planned. As I stood in the midst of the wreckage of my own making, the reality of my actions settled around me like a shroud. The final showdown, the moment of reckoning, had not been a dramatic clash of wills or a passionate plea for forgiveness. It was a quiet surrender, a resignation to the consequences of my choices. The door's soft click as it closed behind Mark was the punctuation mark at the end of our story. A story marred by betrayal, led astray by fleeting desires, and ultimately ended by the inevitable realization of loss. In the quiet aftermath, the echoes of my choices linger like ghosts in the hallways of my life. It's a stark contrast to the whirlwind of deceit and passion that led me here. Each day is a reminder of the weight I carry, a burden forged by my own hands. The fallout is silent yet deafening, a constant companion in my newfound solitude. Reaching out to friends and family feels like grasping at straws, each attempt met with a coldness that chills to the bone. Their disappointment is a tangible thing, a barrier that stands firm between us. Conversations are stilted, filled with unsaid judgments and unasked questions. My social circle, once a source of comfort and joy, shrinks until I find myself navigating long days and even longer nights utterly alone. Work becomes my refuge, or at least, I try to make it so. But whispers follow me like shadows, colleagues casting sidelong glances filled with unspoken accusations. Opportunities that once seemed within easy reach now drift away, carried on currents of distrust and disapproval. My professional life, like my personal one, bears the scars of my actions. In moments of weakness, I find myself wandering the places Mark and I once loved. Each location, once a backdrop to our shared dreams, now serves as a stark reminder of all that I've destroyed. The park where we picnicked on lazy Sundays, the cozy little cafe where we'd huddle over coffee on rainy afternoons, each visit is a punch to the gut, a memory of a dream that will never be fulfilled. The cold, impersonal nature of legal proceedings for the division of our shared assets strips away any remaining illusions of reconciliation. Sitting across from Mark in a sterile lawyer's office, the finality of our shared story is underscored by the signing of documents, the dividing of lives once so intricately entwined. When I collect the last of my belongings from our once shared apartment, each item feels heavy in my hands, a tangible reminder of my loss. The apartment, a place that once rang with laughter and love, now belongs to someone else. Its walls, which once held our dreams, are now just barriers, marking the physical space where our story ended. Hearing about Mark's new life delivers a final blow, a stark realization that while he has moved on, building a life away from the shadow of our past, I remain stuck. Friends, careful with their words, let slip tidbits of his newfound happiness, a happiness that no longer includes me. The knowledge that he has managed to rebuild, to find peace and perhaps love again, is a bitter pill to swallow, leaving me to wonder about the paths not taken, the choices made, and the irreversible course they've set my life on. This chapter of my life is marked by the consequences of my actions, a series of events that have led me to a place of deep introspection and regret. The solitude that envelopes me is not just a physical state but an emotional and psychological one, a space where I must come to terms with the reality I've created. It's a journey of self-discovery, one that forces me to confront the person I've become in the long road ahead to redemption, a road I must navigate alone. Dragging my life into a new apartment felt like trying to paint over a cracked wall. No matter how much I tried, the fractures showed through. This new place, with its empty rooms and unmarked walls, became a blank canvas that somehow reflected the emptiness inside me. There was no escaping the loneliness. It clung to me, a shadow I couldn't shake. In the midst of this, I found myself on a path of self-improvement, a desperate climb out of the pit I dug for myself. I threw myself into books, exercise, anything that promised a sliver of redemption. But progress felt like walking through molasses. Every step forward was slow, every inch gained, a battle. The turning point came with a heavy realization. My actions had razed everything to the ground, not just my relationship with Mark, but my self-respect, my happiness. It was a bitter pill, understanding that the quest for redemption was mine alone to undertake. A solitary journey paved with the shards of my past. Social media became a double-edged sword, a portal to the life I once had. Each scroll, each click, was a window into the happiness I had forsaken. Birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations, I saw them all from the outside, a spectator to a life I was no longer a part of. The isolation was palpable, a digital reminder of the physical and emotional distance that now defined my existence. Trying to forge new relationships felt like navigating a minefield with a blindfold on. My past loomed large, a barrier that seemed insurmountable. Trust, that once flowed so easily towards me, now felt like a rare commodity, one I was deemed unworthy of. Conversations that ventured too close to the heart of my story ended in silence. A judgment passed without words. The day that would have been my wedding anniversary passed in a blur of silence and solitude. There were no celebrations, no shared memories, just a stark reminder of what could have been. That date, once circled in red as a beacon of joy, had become just another day on the calendar, marked only by the weight of regret. In an attempt to navigate the tumults of my inner world, I started keeping a journal. The act of writing became both a lifeline and a mirror, reflecting the turmoil within. Page after page filled with words that spilled out, a mix of loss, remorse, and the faintest glimmers of hope. Documenting my journey became a form of therapy, a way to process the avalanche of emotions that each day brought. These pages, these actions, became the stepping stones on a path towards something resembling peace. The journey was fraught with reminders of my betrayal, shadows of the past that stretched long into my present. Yet, in the solitude of my new apartment, with my journal as my confidant, I began to understand that redemption wasn't just about making amends with others, it was about reconciling with myself, learning to live with the choices I'd made, and finding a way to move forward, one slow, uncertain step at a time. Bumping into one of Mark's friends at the grocery store was like getting slapped by reality. He's moved on, she said, almost apologetically. Engaged. The words hit like a freight train. My Mark was starting anew, building a life I was no longer a part of. The finality of his departure, once a dull ache, sharpened into acute pain. It was a stark reminder that life marches on, with or without you. Nights turned into endless stretches of darkness, the quiet amplifying every regret, every what if. Sleep was elusive, chased away by the ghosts of decisions past. The bed felt too big, the night too long, and my thoughts too loud. There was no escape from the solitude that nightfall brought, only a deep dive into the abyss of my own making. In desperation, I reached out for help, finding myself in the soothing, neutral territory of a therapist's office. Sitting there, amidst the calming colors and soft-spoken words, I began to unravel the tangled mess of emotions and actions that had led me here. It's about learning to forgive yourself, my therapist said, a simple statement that felt insurmountable. Therapy was a slow dance of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Each session peeled back layers of guilt, anger, and sorrow, revealing the raw, vulnerable parts of myself I'd long ignored. It was a painful process, confronting the reality of my choices, but it also brought small moments of clarity, flickers of understanding that perhaps I could learn to live with the consequences of my past. During a particularly challenging week, I stumbled upon a box of old photos. Each snapshot was a portal to a happier time, moments of laughter and love frozen in time. Now, they were just relics of a life that felt like someone else's. The joy in those photos was foreign, replaced by the sharp sting of loss. It was a tangible reminder of the cost of my actions, a price paid in memories and moments that could never be reclaimed. Reaching out to old friends was my next step, a tentative extension of olive branches worn thin by time and neglect. The responses varied. Some doors cracked open, allowing the light of rekindled friendships to seep through, while others remained firmly shut, the damage too great to repair. Each reconnection was a step towards rebuilding a semblance of the social fabric I'd torn apart, a patchwork of relationships mended with time and effort. Seeking a purpose beyond my own healing, I turned to volunteering. Immersing myself in the act of helping others offered a temporary reprieve from my own troubles, a chance to step outside the tangled web of my emotions. It was a balm, however fleeting, for the wounds that seemed ever present. Yet, even in the midst of giving back, the ache of my losses lingered, a constant reminder of the work still to be done. In a moment of loneliness, I found companionship in the form of a dog, a scruffy, loyal creature that asked for nothing but love and returned it tenfold. In his eyes, there was no judgment, only the pure, uncomplicated affection that I so desperately needed. He became my shadow, a constant presence that filled the apartment with life. His simple joy in the mundane walks in the park, the thrill of a new toy reminded me of the beauty in the everyday, the possibility of finding happiness in the simplest of moments. This chapter of my life, marked by loss and the arduous journey towards self-forgiveness, was slowly being rewritten. Each step, whether it was therapy, reconnecting with friends, or finding solace in volunteering in the uncomplicated love of a pet, was a brick in the foundation of a new life. A life built not on the ruins of the past, but on the lessons learned and the small victories won in the battle for redemption. The day I adopted that scruffy little dog, I didn't realize I was also adopting a new lease on life. Suddenly, there was a reason to get out of bed, to step outside and face the world I'd been avoiding. Our walks became more than just a daily routine. They were small steps towards reclaiming the pieces of myself lost in the turmoil. The parks and streets, once reminders of a life I thought I'd lost forever, slowly started to feel like new territories to be explored and appreciated anew. In the midst of this newfound appreciation for the outside world, I stumbled upon a hobby that felt like a lifeline: painting. It started on a whim, a blank canvas and a set of paints bought on a day when the weight of my past felt too heavy to bear. To my surprise, painting offered an escape, a way to express the whirlwind of emotions that words could never quite capture. The act of transferring my feelings onto canvas was therapeutic, a way to process and make sense of the chaos within. My first completed piece was a somber affair, a visual representation of the guilt and sorrow that had been my constant companions. Staring at it, I realized it was more than just paint on canvas. It was a tangible expression of my journey, a way to confront and acknowledge the pain. The decision to display my work at a local gallery came from a place of wanting to share my journey, to step out of the shadows and into vulnerability. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The exhibition, modest as it was, became a pivotal moment, a public declaration of my intent to heal and move forward. The night of the gallery opening, a small group of friends and acquaintances gathered, their presence a tangible support system that I hadn't realized I was rebuilding. Each familiar face was a reminder that despite everything, connections could be mended, that people were willing to stand by me through my process of healing. It was a tentative step towards a new beginning, a chance to redefine myself not by my past mistakes, but by my efforts to grow and learn from them. The feedback on my art was unexpectedly positive, each comment and piece of praise like a beacon of hope in the darkness. It was validation, not just of my art, but of the path I had chosen to walk. The encouragement I received was a reminder that while some doors had indeed closed, others were just waiting to be opened. Standing in the gallery, surrounded by my paintings, I was struck by a profound realization. The journey of healing and redemption wasn't a destination to be reached, but an ongoing process, a path that wound through valleys of despair, but also over peaks of hope. The final painting, a piece symbolizing rebirth, hung prominently, a testament to the possibility of starting anew. It was a visual promise that despite the shadows of the past, the future held the promise of light and color, of new beginnings, and the chance to write a new chapter in the story of my life. This chapter, this moment in the gallery, wasn't an end but a beginning. It was a declaration that I was more than my mistakes, that I was capable of change and growth. As I looked around at the faces of those who had come to support me, I knew that the road ahead was still long and uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face it, to embrace